Hi, Timm Biery here. In my experience, one of the most overlooked aspects of drumming is your grip. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Here we go. When I was studying orchestral percussion in school, one of the things I learned was how to hold a clave properly. I was taught you cup your hand in this fashion, lay one clave on top, and strike with a glancing blow. Now, I've seen a lot of guys in pop music hold the clave like a club, like basically would hold the left hand stick and play like that. As you can hear, there's a big difference in the sound. And I'm not squeezing. I'm just bringing my hands around it. And one of the things I took away from that lesson was maybe that the way I hold the stick, how hard I hold the stick, impacts the tone. And it turns out that was right. If you take your sticks, these are ProMark 808s, hold them a la clave, strike them, and squeeze it, you hear the bottom go away. It's this nice wooden tone that disappears if you hold it too tight. So I try to always hold the sticks as loosely as I possibly can to get the job done. That means sometimes if I swing for something and I miss, that stick's going to go flying across the room. But that goes back to the way I was taught initially, and that's what we're going to talk about here. The very first drum lesson I ever had. Lesson number one. I'm going to do it on the pad, then I'll take the pad off and do it on the stair. My first teacher used what I call a modified version of the Harry Bauer method for drumming. Late 1800s into 1900s. He was popular, made drums, did various things in the northeastern United States. This was the way I was taught, and I'm going to impart that to you. There are many different ways to hold the sticks, many different ways to strike the drum. That's not to say that one way is right or wrong, though I did used to think that. It is to say that open your mind that there are different possibilities and some other possibilities may work for you. So this is the first lesson I ever had. You hold the stick between your middle finger and your thumb and you drop it on the drum and let it bounce as long as you possibly can. Now you move your thumb and second finger back and forth on the stick a little bit at a time until you find the spot where that stick will bounce the longest. And that is your fulcrum. Same thing applies to the left hand. I learned conventional grip. If you're playing match grip, same deal. Notice how the hands aren't touching the stick. The fingers aren't touching the stick at this point, other than this. Now let's talk about conventional. Same deal. Stick is cradled between the thumb and the forefinger, but you are not holding the stick. You're letting it bounce slightly, moving it around to find the spot where it bounces the longest. And that's your fulcrum. Now on a pad you can see, especially this guy, you'll see that it damps pretty quickly. On a snare, and I've got the snares off to demonstrate. So I had to do that 10 minutes 3 times a day for a total of 30 minutes every day for a week before my teacher came back and gave me the second lesson. And my second lesson was let the stick bounce 4 times. How do you do that? Let's put the pad back. Things a little bit easier. And now, of course, I'm lifting it up like a crazy guy, but no. What it is you just close your fingers about the stick. Just a tiny motion. Now, in the right hand, you notice that first bounce is pretty obnoxious. How do you control that? Well, you control that by just bringing the forefinger in and allowing it to touch the stick. As opposed to and that was my second lesson. And again, 30 minutes a day for a week. The third lesson, let the stick bounce 3 times. By this time I was getting pretty good at it. Which actually, he didn't tell me at the time, that happens to be the triple stroke roll. Now you notice I'm not holding the sticks hard at all. Not tightly. It's like, I call it rubber hands. When I play with rubber hands. The stick is doing all the work. I'm not making it happen except for to bring it down. And I'm controlling the rebound. Now, obviously, when you get to slower, you're going to need to stroke that. In a perfect world, that's what you would do. But what you're trying to do with these exercises is be able to let the stick bounce as long as you possibly can. Let the stick bounce as slowly as you possibly can. And try to control it when it's slow. And that'll serve you and really prove to be a helpful technique to learn as we go further down the line, talking about different things. So that was the third lesson. Let it bounce 3 times, which is the triple stroke roll, but he didn't tell me that at the time. The fourth lesson, let it bounce twice. And obviously you're trying to keep the sticks at the same height. It's hard to not help it when you get that slow. But I find if you can bounce freely and relaxed about this speed, because stroking at this speed is pretty easy, the transition from bouncing to stroking becomes very effortless. Strokes, bounces, strokes, bounces, strokes, bounces. And obviously that lesson number 4 was the double stroke up and roll. How do you make it fast? Move your hands faster. The stick's doing the work. There's no great rocket science to this at all. It's just allowing the stick to bounce, keeping the sticks at the same height, and moving your hands faster. Now, there's a single stroke to double stroke exercise here on the site. It's shot pretty poorly, but the concept is the same. If you can do single strokes at this speed, your double strokes are going to be this fast using that mindset. Now you notice all I'm doing is letting the stick bounce. I'm not applying much effort at all to this. Neither should you. So the point of this is, I hold the sticks as loosely as I possibly can. I think it gets a better tone out of the stick. I allow the stick to do as much of the work as possible. I trust the stick. I know that the stick is going to do exactly pretty much the same thing every time, really, because from the age of 7, I've been letting that stick bounce on the drum. So I trust it. So let's move back to the initial exercise, what I call the stick drop. That exercise is a great way to learn the multiple bounce roll. Now, I've seen a lot of videos on the internet about the multiple bounce roll. Virtually everyone says what you do is you hold the stick very tightly, like this, and press. And they always actually press at the side of the drum. I'll tell you what my first teacher told me. That's not a roll. When you play at the side of the drum, that's used for an effect. That's an effect. You should be able to play your multiple bounce roll here. In the middle of the drum. At every volume. So I'm going to show you how to get there. Stick drop exercise. Turn the snares off. And you just speed your hands up. Notice how that I am totally relaxed. I'm letting the stick do the work. One of the keys to this is you start the opposite hand before the current hand finishes. So I start with the right, left. The next hand starts just before that roll, the bounce finishes on the other hand, and that helps to sound smooth and silky. Now, when I get quieter, I notice that these two fingers come into play a little bit on my right hand, and I tighten up slightly on the grip here. And these fingers pump a little bit more, if that makes any sense. Well, let's try that again with the snares on. You'll see what I'm talking about. that's the way I teach the multiple bounce roll. And that is how I was taught to hold the sticks. Just to sum up, my fulcrum is not the first finger and thumb. It is the second finger and thumb. The first finger acts as a governor, so to speak, that the stick hits against, control the distance of the bounces. These two fingers in the rear act as sort of like turbo boost. That's what I call them, the turbo boost. It would be the same on this hand if you play match grip. But since I mostly play traditional, I use a slightly different grip where the stick is resting between the thumb and forefinger. It's loose, and I just lightly bring my fingers around it like that. The key is light touch. And you can play metal music. I made Juggernaut with Frank Marino using the same grip. So you can see, you can play pretty hard and pretty loud. I can get a lot of power. But it's not about that. It's about relaxing. I don't cramp in my hands when I play, even as fast. I don't get injuries in my hands normally. I get more injuries in my hands taking care of my daughter than I do playing drums over 50 years. So give it a shot. Hold the sticks loosely. You'll get a better tone, and you'll have a lot fewer problems with your hands. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.